Please bring my water. Good evening, friends, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your program. It is such an honor to be among such great change makers. For somebody who talks for a living, I need water. I run a morning show from 6:20 to 10 every day. And I do a TV show that's an hour in the evenings twice a week. In between that, I have lots of things I do. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a joy to be among Africans and other people who want to transform their continent. And I want you to put your hands together for the organizers of the program. Reverend Grant Pipim is the name. We met online, we've been chatting. It's such a joy to be here. And Godson as well. I am very happy that tonight you guys are pumped up for action. Tell your neighbor it's time. You are not saying like you know it's time. Tell your neighbor it's time. It's time. It's time. I'm going to talk about 4 things tonight. I'm going to just work with what I've been given. So the theme, it's time. So I'll talk about time. And then I will talk about rethink. I will talk about daring. And I'll talk about leadership. And I've been given 40 minutes. So our allot in Ghana is 1 district, 1 factory, 1 village, 1 dam. So 1 topic, 1 time. Now, we are in an era of the convergence of multiple shocks. And many different challenges are happening at the same time. In the past, you could define the 70s as the lost 70s. And the 80s were the years of structural adjustment. And the 90s were the years of recovery. And then 2000 was Y2K. So in the past, every decade had something that was characterized by it. But in this 1 decade, from 2020, we've had a confluence of crisis. So multiple shocks happening frequently. So we've had COVID-19. Now, COVID is not over. Then we've had climate challenges. We also have conflict. Russia-Ukraine has not ended. All of a sudden, Gaza has erupted. So we have a decade's worth of challenges in half a decade. And economists and political watchers say these shocks are going to be more frequent and deeper. We are also in an era of paradoxes, because whilst we have the greatest amount of capital available in the world, we also have the greatest amount of young people without money to do business. We have the greatest knowledge available in terms of social and traditional media. Yet we have the greatest amount of militant ignorance in all spheres of society. It's a paradox because there's so many resources, yet so much poverty. In fact, my favorite quote, I've said it in a speech before, a quote by George Carlin. He calls it the paradox of our time in history. And I will give you highlights of that to encapsulate the challenge of our time as the basis for what I'm going to present to you. He says, the paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings but shorter tempers. We have wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. He says we have more knowledge but less judgment. He says we spend more but we have less. We buy more but we enjoy less. We have bigger houses but smaller families. We have more conveniences but less time. He says we have more degrees but less sense. More knowledge but less judgment. These are days of more experts yet multiple problems. More medicine but less wellness. He says we have multiplied our possessions but we have reduced our values. We have learned how to make a living but we don't have a life. He says we have added years to our life but not life to our years. And this one is a very painful one. It says we've been all the way to the moon and back, but we have trouble crossing the street to meet a neighbor. Then he says we've done larger things but not better things. These are times of fast foods but slow digestion. Bigger men, but smaller character. Steeper profits, but shallower relationships. These are days of 2 incomes, yet more divorce. These are days of fancier houses, but broken homes. He says that these are days of quick trips, disposable diapers, throwaway morality, one-night stands, overweight bodies, pills to wake you up, pills to put you to sleep, pills to make you happy, pills to keep you under control. And then he says, in conclusion, that these are days of showrooms in windows, but no showcase lives. So you are in a period of great stress. And I came to say to you that this is the greatest time to live, even though it may look like the worst time to live, because this is also the greatest time of opportunity. Because the kinds of things you are hearing, age 20 to 30, many people in fact, in my father's family, my father was the first person to be educated. And he got to university master's degree level. And now his children have reached PhD level. So even though in the eras before, people said they have simpler lives, there wasn't as much opportunity. So now you can sit in Accra and relate to people all over the continent. I can speak at Gimpa in Legon and be heard in 20 countries. So I have opportunity to influence in a much greater way than Nkrumah did. So even though Nkrumah may have written more books and may have been much smarter than I am, I have a bigger chance to make a greater difference. So it's time to make a difference. We should not look at the challenges of our time and reminisce and think about the past and say, oh, for the good old days, because the good old days are here and now. There's a song we used to sing in primary school. It says, the time to be happy is now, and the place to be happy is here. And the way to be happy is to make someone happy. So I came to challenge you. You are here at the right time for a right purpose. This is the time to make a difference. It's not going to happen when we are old men. The time for Africa's liberation is not 50 years from now. It begins in the mindsets of the young people. The time for us to free ourselves from the shackles of colonialism, those times are not in some distant future. Because true freedom is not in breaking chains from people's hands. It's in removing the impediments in their minds. And so long as young men like me have a mic to influence mindsets, Africa's liberation will begin. Because in every person's body is a brain. We hope so, right? And in every brain is a mind. So the mind is more important than the brain. But behind every mind is a mindset. And the challenge with us is that even though we have been well educated, our mindset restricts and limits us. So part of the liberation story is to deal with the shapers that influence mindsets. So you can have a well-educated mind, but a recessive and defeatist mindset. And the mindset of our continent has been shaped by at least 4 or 5 shapers. The first shaper is education. There's nothing wrong with education. We all must be enlightened. Light is sweet. But the purpose of education is not to wear suits and speak big English and become analysts. The purpose of education is to have empathy and to challenge what you've been taught, to free yourself from what has limited you. So the liberation of Africa must begin with taking back the shaper of education, where we say it's not about passing exams or cramming. It's about being willing to learn, but also being committed to apply what is learned and to challenge what you are taught, even with limited resources. So we can't rethink if we don't rethink education. So the first point I came to say to you is, don't just go to school for degrees. The days of just acquiring information are over. These are the days where you need to have application of knowledge. So yes, go to school, but be more determined to be an applier of what you learn. So we must rethink education if we must be free. The second shaper is religion or faith. I'm a Christian and I believe that we must serve the Lord with all our lives. But there is a type of Christianity that has been brought to us which puts personal prosperity ahead of personal sacrifice, that makes success and big auditoriums and flying nice planes and the bling bling as the main purpose of the ministry. But even the Christ we follow, he says he learned obedience by the things he suffered. So there's a new version of Christianity, which is a crossless Christianity. Nobody wants to sacrifice. Nobody wants to go to rural areas to do church. Everybody wants to be in the city to make a lot of money. So if we are to liberate ourselves, we must rethink faith and go back to the basics of the tenets of what you were taught. Is somebody hearing me in this place? So to There must be a rethink of what Christianity is. There is a mindset that I won't suffer. Everybody wants to prosper. But we are not called to just be successful and to be prosperous. We are also called, he said concerning Paul, he says, I will show him the things he must suffer for my sake. He was the greatest mind of his day. Then he says, there was a thorn in my flesh. And 3 times I prayed to the Lord to remove the thorn. And what did God say? He says, my grace is sufficient for thee. So to liberate ourselves, we must go back to the basic tenets of pure Christianity, which places sacrifice at the center of our faith and giving and help. It says true religion is to visit widows in their need and to remember the poor. It's not to amass vehicles and to look great and wear a nice suit and have a big billboard. So we must recapture the shaper of religion. The third shaper we must recapture is the shaper I belong to. It's called the media. In my days, when I started media in the late 90s and early 2000s, media was a one-to-many medium where you speak on air and people hear you. But this is a many-to-many era. So now you can start your own TV station in your bedroom. Knowledge is limitless. So media must not just be a platform for regurgitating and parroting what people say. When I started doing radio, it was cool to just bring 2 politicians from 2 different sides to have an argument. We had never seen it like that, because in military years, it was impossible to even have a simple citizen question his leader. So to bring politicians on air was great. But these are different days. Today's is not the day of splitting hairs with politics. This is the day of media as a development tool, where now you discuss ideas, where now you become a channel for development, where your response to crisis is not just criticism, but also to use your rallying power because of all the powers media has. Media is not just a platform for speech. It also has what I call convening power. So when there's a flood in your country like there is in Ghana, we use our mics to show the extent of the devastation. But that's not all we do. We also use our credibility to rally support for people who are in trouble. So we travel to the rural communities and we give them relief. So the media that will bring our liberation must be a media that understands our development context. That there are existential challenges our young people are facing. That when they turn on the internet, there are agendas that want to change their socialization, that wants to make them redefine what is truth, that wants to make them look down on themselves and support things from other parts of the world. Media must be conscious of that battle and inform itself. So if you're a young person who wants Africa to be free, you cannot afford to be oblivious of media. So whether it's education or faith or media, these shapers must be conquered by well-thinking young Africans who understand the medium and will pay the price to use the platform to bring change. Is somebody following what I'm saying? And so in Rethink, we are rethinking the role of traditional and social media. When I started journalism, news broke on radio, but now news breaks on social media. In my early days, people listened to the radio to know what was happening. Now people go online. They only use the traditional media to confirm what they hear. That means that the modern media man cannot focus just on speed. He must also focus on accuracy and context. So it's not about sharing. Now all of us on WhatsApp groups, our greatest preoccupation now is to forward what we hear without thinking through. So you have aunties who forward conspiracy theories and confuse people. But if we are going to use media to shape people, then we have to go back to the basics of fact checking and making sure that we are not just parrots of traditional orthodoxies, but we are people who confirm and verify before we forward. Are you following what I'm saying? So this is the era for rethinking. We must rethink our place in the society of the world. Africans have for long been at the bottom of the food chain of everything. We have only 2% of world trade. There is no respect for the African, partly because we have allowed ourselves to be sliced and diced, because we have a small man's mentality. Many Africans only think of themselves, and they've been trained to think that it's about me first. But that's not how to be free. So to move into freedom, we must rethink society. Society is not about me, myself, and I. It's not about if I'm appointed. I choose people from my hometown because Because of colonialism, we were sliced. I'm from the Volta region. Some of my family is in Togo. Another family is in Ghana. Some of you are from the Western region. Your family was split. Colonialism was an agenda to divide Africans. But we've been independent for 60 years. And yet we still argue. Go to our WhatsApp groups. We are still arguing politics on tribal lines. So all those from the Volta are NDC. And those from Ashanti are MPP. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. We are not supposed to self-define by ethnic group. Your political conviction should not be on the basis of where you are from, because that's the way to keep yourself down. Even the ancient Greeks were wise enough to know that society had 3 levels. The first level was the person who thought only about himself, and according to the Greeks, that person is an idiot. The second level is the person who thinks only about his tribesmen. He thinks about people from his village, his hometown, his secondary school, people who are part of his church. He calls that a tribesman. But the third level is the one who says, I am because you are. I am a man not because of your color of your skin, but by the content of your character. So his agenda on his idea of a neighbor is your shared humanity, and he calls them citizens. And so one of my mentors said the problem with Africa is that we have too many idiots and too many tribesmen, but too few citizens. Oh, for a citizen who's enlightened, whether I'm from Zimbabwe or Zambia or Kenya or Malawi, it's not about my tribe. It's because we are shared humanity. So I will think about my African neighbor. I will not close my border and say, because I speak English and you speak French, you are my enemy. And I'll not let my colonialists set me up against you. And so we are calling for citizens. The charge for tonight is be a citizen, not just a spectator. A citizen is somebody who thinks about his neighbor based on his shared humanity, not because of tribe or color or religion or ethnicity or creed. Is somebody following what I'm saying? And so we are calling on you to rethink how you self-identify. That is not about your tribe, it's about your shared humanity. And it's not about your self-gratification. It's not about what I eat now. It's about the next generation. And so in rethinking our shared humanity, I'll present a few ideas for us as young Africans. If you are aged below 40, it means that this continent belongs to you. Many people who speak on behalf of the continent have no stake in the continent's future. The last time I checked, Africa was the youngest continent in the world. In the next 15 years, 40% of people under 20 will be Africans. So we are told. The average age of a Ghanaian is 21 years old. The average age of a Ugandan is about 19. SSA has mostly, in fact, if African countries were students, most Africans will be aged below 21. Yet the people who lead us are old, and we have not been given a stake at the table. But I came to say to you that you can't wait for that stake. It's not a queue. You don't have to sit and say, until I'm 45, then I'll aspire for office. Those days are over, because the opportunity is here. So power will never be given to you. You have to go for it. And I'm not talking about military power. I'm talking about the power of self-determination, that I have a stake in this future, and that I have more in Ghana's future than the people in parliament, because most of them don't even have their kids here. Most of them are not thinking about what happens in the next 10 years. Most of them don't go to hospital here. In fact, if you take the average African politician, their children are schooling abroad. They go for medical check abroad. They support football teams abroad. They've invested their resources not in Africa. It means they don't have a real stake in the continent. Those days have to change. We, the youth of Africa, have a stake in the continent, and we are the guys who must fight for the continent to be free. And you cannot free a continent when you are not free yourself. So the greatest task of leadership for you is not to go on the street first. It's first to go inside and say, what are the mindsets that are limiting me? How am I perpetuating my own bondage? What decisions am I taking that are making me suffer? Now you must lead yourself first in a different mindset. Now if you can do that, you're on the path to freedom. Is somebody following what I'm saying? So even though the world is big and waiting for us to flow, it must start from within. The faith I follow, it works from inside out. It doesn't work from outside in. The enemy works from outside in. So when he attacked Job, he attacked his family, then he attacked his body. But when God saves you, he works from your inside first. So it's a principle for liberation. Liberation doesn't begin with guns and cutlasses. It begins with the way you think about yourself from the inside. For as a person thinketh in his heart, so is he. So I am detribalized. I don't care where you are from. It's not about my hometown or my village. It's about our shared humanity. So start with an internal process. It means that you must pay the price to learn. You must pay the price to re-educate yourself. You must challenge what you've been taught. I always say that we don't have many true economists on the continent, because a great economist is not somebody who is respected by Yale or Harvard, who even publishes in the greatest economic journals. A great economist is somebody who understands the local context of his problems and can apply the theories he's learned to free his own people from the shackles of dependency on others. How can you have the world's third largest man-made lake, which starts all the way from the north and ends at the mouth of the sea? It produces 1.5 million cubic liters of fresh water, and yet you can't feed yourself. You spend $300 million to buy rice from Vietnam and Thailand, the rice that they grow and put on ships, and you look for dollars to pay for the rice and eat it, and you wear a suit and think you are smart. There's something wrong with you. That you have the Fumbisi Rice Valley, you have the Asuchari Plains, you have arable land. Africa has the greatest arable land in the rest of the world. You are selling your arable land to Chinese to build factories, yet you can't feed your citizens. There's something wrong with the continent. So we have to rethink our economics. So don't focus on passing the exam. When you take your economics, you ask yourself, what can I learn here to free my people? How can I go back with this knowledge to make my continent free? So you have a task, young man. You are not to just wear a nice suit and impress the girls. You have a task to make sure your children have a better future than you. So you must immerse yourself in the philosophy you are studying and use it to free yourself. The days of looking for cheap publicity, now it's all about likes and clicks. So it's whether what you say is smart or not. Once 200 people like it, it means you are great. But I reject that as a mode of influence. Influence has nothing to do with how many people are following you or how many people are liking what you say. The salience of an idea has nothing to do with how many people click it or like it. Truth, it will stand irrespective of who stands for it or against it. So I came to challenge you. Go beyond surface things. We have a society with young men who are overexposed but underdeveloped. They are too known in the public sphere, but they don't know enough to free themselves. That education has to change. So our economics must be about self-determination. Our industrialization must be about value addition. If you go into Ghana's economy, for the first 30 years of our life, the greatest employer was agriculture. Many countries have to go through the junction of manufacturing before they end up in services. But we have broken that and moved straight into services, and we are not adding value to anything. The purpose of life is not about how much you can eat, it's about how much value you can add. So Africa must move to a mindset of value addition, that you will stop exporting cocoa raw, exporting gold raw, exporting timber raw. These are the issues of our time that our education must confront. So if you are studying economics, you don't just want to pass the exam, you want to understand, how can I start as a chocolatier and add value to my chocolate, and how can I penetrate other markets? Am I making sense to somebody? We are not knowledgeable if our knowledge does not make us free. He says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Knowledge is not power. It is applied knowledge which is power. Our universities are full of knowledgeable men who have great degrees with many titles. In my MCing, if I make the mistake of reducing a person's rank, they will not even talk to me because they are a professor that you have reduced their rank. But I came to suggest to you, sir, your professorship is not about your title. It's about what is your knowledge doing to free you. If you can't apply your knowledge to free yourself, then you don't know anything. So our education must be now more practical. The knowledge I have learned, yes, I studied economics, but what defines me is media. And I didn't study media in a classroom. I studied media on the job. It was 4 years of volunteer broadcast journalism with no salary. You would have thought that I'll be lecturing at Harvard, having gotten a first class in economics. But what I learned in books are forgotten. But what I learned on the street, going out there to do interviews, going there to do recordings, knowing how to have conversations, nobody can take it away from me. So if I were you, I will focus on the practical practical aspect. Yes, you must pass your exam, but acquire knowledge in a way that nobody can take it away from you. You must know it to a point where even when you are asleep and they wake you up at night, you know what to do. It says, and the men of Issachar, they had understanding of the times, and their brethren were at their command. Why? Because they knew what Israel ought to do. So true knowledge is knowing what to do and having the courage to apply it, which brings us to the second point: dare. So many people have knowledge, but too few people want to dare. So many people think they don't have a stake at the table, because as young people we are trained to be seen and not heard. So when your uncle comes from the village, they parade you and say, this is Kofi, this is Kwamina, this is Akuya, and they go and sit at the back. Children don't have a voice on the continent. They think you have to be old to speak. But I came to announce you that those days are over. These are the days where daring youth will create a platform for themselves. They will go on air and speak. This week I've been interviewing people about flood relief. I've interviewed politicians and businessmen. The best interview I had was with students in secondary and primary school who came to empty their piggy bank to support relief efforts, and everybody was inspired. So there's a space for young people. Dare to speak out. If you are being abused, don't keep quiet, speak out. If there's lies and oppression happening around you, your silence is consent, your silence is acquiescence. I came to challenge you to dare. Write an article, start a blog, start a vlog. They may say don't talk in class, nobody can stop you from writing a blog. You can put an article there a day, somebody will read it on another continent. Is somebody hearing what I'm saying? They may not invite you to come on the big stations because you don't have the clout or the money, but if you have a consistent track record of podcasts on your own page, somebody will listen to you and change. We don't have to wait for a big TV station to invite us for a political debate. We can organize our own program on air and speak to the nations. Are you listening to what I'm saying? So I came to challenge you to dare to be different. Sameness creates comfort, but it is difference that creates reward. So don't be shy that you're different. Don't try to blend in. Stand out. I don't care what people say about me. He's too skinny, he talks too much, he's always screaming when he's preaching. But I have a message for a generation that if it takes oppression to keep us down, then men must dare to be different. Are you listening to what I'm saying? So take your destiny into your own hands. Don't think just about Ghana, like she was saying. When you start a company, think about Nigeria, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Botswana. This week I interviewed two people from Botswana. One became a minister when she was 29. She's on all kinds of global platforms. The other one is the CEO of a company called Lesheho. At 26, he was the COO. Maybe it's because of you I interviewed those guys to tell me that even though I'm in Ghana, I can interview two Botswana people, and they were before 40, movers and shakers already. And the second one was a woman. She was not intimidated. She didn't need permission to speak clarity to the world powers. She was speaking about climate finance with such precision. These are the Africans we want. These are the new people we want to have in our society, and that's how you must see yourself. Don't see yourself as somebody who has nothing to offer. Speak out and be bold. Which brings me to the third and final point. Yes, you must change your mindset. Yes, you must dare. But the most important message for Africa is the leadership message, because everything rises and falls on leadership. This quote does not belong to me. The man who reformed GIMPA, Professor Stephen Adair, when he came to GIMPA, there were more laborers than lecturers in this place. This was a bush and a dump. Nobody wanted to come here. In 7 years of being the rector of GIMPA, it became the #1 public training institution. You can check the records, the infrastructure, the grass, everything about GIMPA changed just because of one man. And he says, leadership is cause, everything else is effect. So despite all the things I've said about rethink and dare, if we don't understand leadership, we will not be free. If we don't embrace the question of leadership, if we don't challenge the ideas we've been presented, one of the ideas we've been presented, the wrong ideas, is that leadership is a position. So from class 1, you want to be cupboard boy, you want to be class prefect. Everybody wants to win elections. So we are training leaders to think leading is about winning. Winning may be part of leadership, but being a winner does not make you a leader. We have trained men in Africa who know how to win elections but don't know how to lead. Life is not about winning elections. I don't need an election to influence. The definition of leadership is influence. causing positive change. The ultimate test of a leader is creating positive change. So don't tell me the result you got in the election. Tell me what changes you have brought to the position. Don't tell me what position you occupy. When you write a man's name, everybody wants a MBA, PhD. I don't need all those things. They want titles. I don't need all those titles. I'm not defined by my title. Mention my name by what I can influence. What can you change? It's not about whether you're a professor. I don't need any position. I have only a master's degree. But put me on air and give me 1 hour. I will change a nation. I will change their mindset. That's what makes me a leader. I don't need your position. I don't need your title. So our concept of leadership must change. And we must understand that the key to leadership is understanding priorities. If you don't know how to prioritize the future and the next generation, you can't be an effective leader. The men we admire, like Kwame Nkrumah, if they were thinking about self-preservation, we wouldn't have Ghana the way it is. So a generation that prioritizes itself against the future hasn't understood leadership. The quickest way to become a leader is to solve a problem. So when we are talking about leadership, we are talking about problem solvers. These days our leaders create more problems by some of their boros policies, but for a generation of leaders who understand problem solving. So instead of asking to be given a position, look for the nearest problem to you and solve it. The more problems you solve, the more value you create. The more value you create, the more influence you have, and the more influence you have, the greater the leader you are. So instead of looking for posts, instead of lobbying and bribing to be given a position, look for a problem and solve it. But it's not just about solving problems, it's also about vision. It says write the vision, make it plain on the table that he may run who reads it. A leader must dare to dream for the future. A leader is a person who makes today's impossibilities tomorrow's routine. It means that in our time, girls didn't have access to education, but by the time I take that position, young girls will be at the pinnacle of society. In the past, Africans were not recognized and respected, but by the time we are done, Africans will be at the top. That's what a true leader is. So a leader is a door opener, not the one who goes in first, but the one who makes sure the last person enters before he enters. So the price tag of leadership is sacrifice. So many people don't understand sacrifice, and yet they want to be leaders. So it's cost me to come to be here. I told him this morning I was on air. From there I had to go and moderate a program and then go and do some stuff in the house. Couldn't even have a nap. But if there's a chance to influence the next generation, I have to pay the price. So you may be feeling tired, but you have to learn, not because you want to be comfortable. So in Africa we give our leaders the best comfort. They don't drive through traffic, they don't use our hospitals, they don't use our trotros, they don't eat our food, their children don't go to our universities, and we hail them and say they are great. We forget that the purpose of leadership is to open doors. So a true leader is a servant. Our mindset for leadership, it has to change, people. And so we cannot be free if we don't re-engage the concept of leadership. It's not about the first among equals. It's about working together to bring change. Is somebody following what I'm saying? And so there's a new leader emerging from UPLIFT. We are enticing you to say that the yesterday's leader, using a biblical analogy, is like Elijah. Elijah confronted the prophets of Baal alone. He killed 400 men in a day, but he was soon exhausted and wanted to commit suicide. But when he said to the Lord, I want you to release me to go, the Lord said to him, okay, before you go, I want you to do 3 things. He says, I want you to anoint 3 men to take over from you. He says, I want you to anoint Hazael to be king of Syria. And I want you to anoint Jehu to be king of Israel. And then anoint Elisha to be prophet in thy place. And then the Lord said, it shall come to pass that he who escapes the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay. And he who escapes the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. So God was saying to Elijah that the era of 1 man 1,000 is over, where one person wants to do everything, to be a standout leader. He's saying that I'm replacing your 1 man 1,000 leadership with a 3-in-1 leadership. It means that the era of just trying to be a local champion and a superstar is over. So we have to understand networking and collaboration. That what will help Africa is not building new walls and trade barriers. It is opening up to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, understanding our shared humanity as Africans, so so it means we must understand the power of aggregation, the power of working together. We may be small alone, but we can be mighty together. So let's begin to think about our neighbors as our co-creators, not as our competition, not as our competitors. Is somebody following what I'm saying? And so I will end with a quote I heard from a man I interviewed this week. He was talking about the need and the necessity for action, and he made a very profound statement. The statement was encapsulated in 3 questions. He says, we must be free, we must lead, but if not now, when? If not as whom? And if not together, how? It means that the time to act is now. It means that the person to act is you. And the way to act is together. We've tried to fight this oppression as individuals. This has not worked. This is the time to go back to work together, to see ourselves as neighbors and trade among ourselves and discuss among ourselves and stop suspecting ourselves and respect and love ourselves and place our neighbor above ourselves. That is the key to our freedom. So long as we see our next door neighbor as an enemy, and they are francophones and we are anglophones, and they are Chinese and we are this, there is no way we are going to be free. So I came to encourage you, don't let this just be another talk shop. Before you go, look for a lateral connection. Connect with somebody on the lateral side. Begin to discuss business. Begin to discuss how you can collaborate on education. We have children in flood-prone areas who have no teacher because their schools have been decimated. Organize your friends and go to the community. Begin a network of volunteerism. The issues of our continent will not be solved by just big politics and policy. It's also going to be solved by networking and sacrifice. So our young people, please understand the power of the network. The biggest companies in the past 20 years were built on the principle of being large. So 25 years ago, the top 10 companies in the world, whether it was ArcelorMittal or Coca-Cola, or whether it was IBM, they were large companies. They were built on power systems and domination. But the largest companies of our time are all built on the principle of the network. So whether it is Apple, whether it is Google, whether it is Alibaba, whether it is Microsoft, it's not about being big. It's not about dominance. It's about the power of the network which liberates. So the era teaches us the virtue that if we will be successful in 2023, it's not about just being one big person. It's about being strong as a network that cannot be broken. So let Uplift continue, not just in Ghana. Do your own version in Zimbabwe. Do your own version in Cairo. Do your own version in Botswana. Come together. Invite people. Don't invite people from just your country. Connect us together. Let's see you take this to the next level. That is the key to our freedom. Don't leave here thinking that you are intimidated. Leave here believing that you can hold a conference and speak better than the guy speaking. You don't have to shout like I'm shouting. You don't have to do it my style, but you'll be as effective as you have to be, because you can only be the best version of yourself. I came to encourage you that gatherings like this may have started small, but give it a few years, you will see the size of the changed mindset. It's not about how large the stadium is. It's about how many people have bought into the idea. So work quietly underground. Network with like-minded people. And have faith that this is our time. Don't let anybody tell you it's not your time. I'm talking like this because I know this is my time. I know I have a voice and I will use it. I will not be intimidated. It's not about my bank account. It's not about the car I drive. But there is a destiny of a continent at stake, and I have a future in that stake. And so I don't need anybody's permission to talk. And as long as I have breath, I'll talk like this. I want you to have that mindset as well. I thank you very much.